6 months worth of inventory.
And we've got 3.2. That's what I was going to say.
You are now listening to the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast.
You see this guy here staring back at you? That's your toughest opponent. Every time you get into the ring, that's who you're going against. I believe that in boxing, and I do believe that in life.
Your weekly deep dive into DFW real estate, life, and beyond. With your hosts, Tavis Westbrook and Ashton Hines.
What's up? The Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast. What's going on, Tavis?
I'm good, man.
National Coffee Day. Yeah, for sure. You got
National
your coffee
Day?
Yeah, I got my golden doodle trying to break in. Oh, chai tea. You didn't know it was National Coffee Day.
I did not.
We are set to go, the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast. So we're trying to work out our format. We've got things going. A good buddy, Josh Miller's helping us out, and he's actually producing. You can't see him or hear him, but he's helping us out and been a huge guide in getting all this going. So as we move forward, things will hopefully get a little bit more smooth and polished, and we're hoping to come to you twice a week. We are going to do a Friday release of a podcast where we're going to really touch on news and sort of the current events as they have to deal with real estate. And then we're going to do some deep dives, almost like a real estate heavyweight university type series, where we're going to come to you every Tuesday is our hope, where we really go deep onto different real estate topics. And I think we're going to tackle flipping and doing just real estate investing that's going to be our first series. So definitely pay attention to that. Subscribe. Anything you can do to send this podcast to people that you think might be interested in learning about real estate in DFW. But honestly, the stuff we're going to talk about as far as flipping and that sort of thing goes is going to really pertain anywhere you are in the United States. And then today, hopefully we'll touch on some topics that are just kind of fun. And real estate, and when you start paying attention, real estate is honestly everywhere. And it's in the news. And so, I don't know if you've been paying attention at all to Tavis. Have you kept up? And I don't necessarily want to get political on this podcast on a regular basis, but have you been keeping up at all with the Trump news on his real estate up in New York?
I have not.
Yeah, man. It came out yesterday that evidently there's a judge that has ruled that a lot of his real estate holdings in New York could be taken away from his control. And when I originally heard that, I was like, man, that is absolutely crazy. So I was like, what would it take? What would you have to do in order for one person to be able to take control? I mean, they're talking about Trump Tower. They're talking about one of his golf courses, a couple of his residences. So I was like, man, that is, to believe what you want to believe. It seems like overreach, I'm like, that is insane. But then I started looking at it, and evidently it comes down to investors. And so what he was doing, according to the news, investor group, and he would say it was for other reasons worth like $200 million. And so he was getting a lot of these investors to come in on these deals. And then when it was tax time, somehow he would deflate what they were worth. And he did this over the course of it. So anyway, I'm like, man, that is absolutely insane.
Wow. No, I mean, it sounds like exactly what was happening on the low scale of things back in, 2005, 6, 7,
Right.
Or prior to that, I guess. I guess the discovery happened in post 05, right?
Yeah.
But, that was what was happening in the residential world. People were inflating sales prices or inflating appraisal prices, pulling money back out of it. And
how were they doing? I saw the movie The Big Short. So back then, how were people doing that? I mean, were they like on a one-on, if you're talking about syndications and there's all sorts of presentations and maybe there's a value to a building, cash flow, there's cap rates. Like when you get on the huge commercial level, I'm sure there's things that I have zero idea about when they value it. It's not just the actual physical building, they're valuing the business and that sort of thing. So I don't necessarily know how you'd even do that. But on a one-on-one basis, back then, was it just way easier to get influence over the appraiser, or how are they inflating values?
Yeah, you could choose your appraiser back then too. So that was now why that has all changed.
Yeah.
And, appraisers were getting kickbacks and, that was happening quite a bit. And I was actually, I was pretty green. I was like a year in the business, and I had a group of people that I knew that were giving me these listings. Of course, I was excited. It was like getting these $1 million listings up in McKinney. Yeah, I'm like, heck yeah, this is great, man. This is like $30,000 commissions, right? And I'd go list them, and of course they were inflated in what they wanted compared to what was selling. But they were having me just list them and put them on the market to show intent that they were trying to do the right thing. But they had already screwed the pooch, right? They had already inflated the sales price or inflated the appraisal price, pulled all their cash out of it. And it was pretty wild. I had some firsthand experience with some people that were doing it, and they would basically, kind of find the deal. Sometimes it was a pre-foreclosure, it was an REO, or it might have been even a new build. And they would buy it, and they would get other investors in that had really good credit, and they would put the mortgage in the other people's name. And they were doing like stated loans, so it was just like, state your income, you got a 800 credit score, so let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
And then they would get in, and they would push the appraisal up, and then pull the cash difference out, and then split it up between them. And then the property would just sit there. And, in some cases, they would put tenants in it at a very cheap rate just to kind of ride the wave, if you will. And I don't know if, their full intent was to actually do that and like screw everybody, or if it just kind of happened with the downfall of the market, simultaneously,
Yeah, they just kind of, and I think a lot of times, I've never committed fraud, but if, I could see that, if you do something and you don't have the full intent, you're not really intending to commit fraud, but you do something and it kind of hints at it, and then you realize, well, that worked out, let's try it again. You're kind of pushing the edge. I could see it that way, or I could see some of those guys, you get upside down on a project, and then how to kind of get out of it. You sort of inflate this one over here, and you think it's going to kind of balance out, and we'll just do this and we'll get out of project A. And like, I could see how it would happen. But the crazy part is that the government and the rules, they were so loose back then that there was no checks and balances. And that's what happened after 2008, all those checks and balances and all that sort of, it would be more difficult to do it now, which is bringing it back to the Trump stuff. It's crazy that someone who controls hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate can still work the system in a way that's like, not only is like, well, okay, we're going to fine you, but it's like, no, we are taking control away from that. So, how the mechanism of that is to be debated, and is that even right? And should one person have the power to do that,
And to dive deeper, I mean, how much is this is something that he directly even knew about? Right. I mean, and I'm just thinking somebody of that magnitude, this guy doesn't deal with his real estate day to day. You know what I mean? Like, the way that he's got it structured out, and he sure the heck didn't do it when he was president. He wasn't involved in his, real estate portfolio day to day, right?
He wasn't meeting an appraiser out at Trump Tower.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously, an owner and the president of the board and all that. Sure. So, I mean, he's got to be involved when certain things involve him. But I mean, there's layers and layers of people underneath him that have the executive decisions to be made. So it's interesting. I mean, when you start thinking about the layers and layers of people underneath you that you trust that can make mistakes, and it's not in any way just a defensive. I mean, he could have known about it, but I'm just thinking of somebody at that magnitude.
How much is he working on it?
There's no way that you can sit there and know every single move that's going on in your real estate portfolio every day.
All right, a little bit more local.
At that level.
A little bit more local. We actually, so Tavis and I, he was gracious enough to invite me on a brisket trimming to a brisket trimming class the other day, put on by the Dallas Mavericks. Tavis is a season ticket holder. And so they put on these little events. We went down to their practice facility, which is right across the street from the AAC where they play. And as we're driving down there, we drove by this dilapidated but cool old hotel apartment complex looking thing. And I actually mentioned, Tavis is a big fan of mid-century architecture and design. And I was like, man, that's a pretty cool place. And Tavis, you knew about this place, and it popped up in the news this week. The Cabana Hotel, which is right next to the practice facility. It used to be a really cool 1950s probably hotel that actually was converted to a women's prison at one point, you said. Mm-hmm. It has been acquired evidently a year ago, but they've announced that they're doing an apartment complex that's going to be partially affordable housing. It looks like it's about maybe like a 64 income related or income restricted units, and then 96 market rate units. So not maybe, let's see, like, I don't know, a third or whatever the math comes out there. But they're kind of doing a little bit of a mixed use and mixed income level apartment complex there. So that'll be cool. I hope they keep the architecture because it does look like an awesome building. Yeah.
I was excited to see this thing go through originally because so I'm pulling it up real quick at the Preservation Dallas, which is the, nonprofit board that is basically in charge of, they seek out certain properties, mm-hmm. that have some kind of historic tribute, and they basically rally to try to save these buildings.
Yeah.
And this was
I wanted to buy the Como, the motel in
exactly.
Richardson.
Yeah.
It's old. It's probably going to be torn down, but it's on I-75, and it's a super cool 1950s literal motel that's got a really neat sign. I drove by. I was flipping a house around the corner from there, and I drove by that thing constantly, and thought, man, that'd be so cool to turn that into like a retro Airbnb feel and have kind of a neat cafe out front there. And it went for sale. There was a for sale sign out front for maybe a day, but it wasn't listed online. I couldn't find any info on it. And then like the next day or two, I realized, the word was it had sold to somebody. So there was a big push over in Richardson I think the community was trying to save it, to try to keep it around, but it'll be a Chili's or something. It won't be that. I don't think that's highest and best use.
They said something about parking, so I don't know what's
better.
going adjacent to it. If they're building a big parking garage, I mean, most likely it's going to be more residential, apartment buildings is what I'm, if I was a betting man,
if we need one more thing around here, it's more apartments and parking lots. So
right,
it would be nice to have a Southwest egg roll every once in a while in the Richardson area. Let's see. There was. Have you been over to Granite Park in Plano? Have you ever spent time over there?
At Granite Park, yeah.
Yeah. Granite Park, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's the north part of Plano, right across the 121 from Stonebriar Mall. It is an enormous development, and they actually announced this morning that Granite Park 6, 420,000 square feet of office space, is now open there. And that's just a really, really cool place to.
That's where the boardwalk is, right?
The boardwalk, yeah.
Yeah, and the boardwalk's super cool.
And there's a Hilton right there. Yeah. When the weather's good, and you got the Hilton right there. So if you're coming into Dallas, it's a neat place to stay because you're centrally located to the Frisco, and you got the Star, and you've got Legacy Hall and all that there. You got Nebraska Furniture Mart. It's a great place to stay. But they have a thing called the Boardwalk, where there's kind of a fountain. I mean, to call it, it's not like the Bellagio, but it's like it's a fountain. But it's kind of cool. Yeah. And there's a lot of outdoor seating. There's a Union Bear, which is a brewery, a brew pub, really good food. There's a kind of a Caribbean bar restaurant, seafood restaurant there. Chips Burgers is there. There's a cool a coffee shop. So yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful place to go down and kind of walk around when the weather is great for a few weeks a year.
Yeah.
So
Ashton, real quick, just wanted to go back to the Cabana Hotel real quick.
Yeah.
I pulled it up. So built 1962, developed by Jay Sarno, who was also responsible for developing properties in Vegas, the Caesars Palace.
Oh, that makes sense.
In 1966 and Circus in 1968.
Yeah.
10-story, 300-room hotel. What it's known for is the decorative concrete screen, which is, what we call, breeze block and stuff like that. But in this case, it was just, it's a screen that's built up in front. Right? Exactly. Yeah. So it kind of blocks out you can't see any doors, but when you're looking out, you can look out, right? Without an obstructed view. Let's see. It says, they once welcomed famed guests, including the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Jimi Hendrix, Richard Nixon, Norman Mailer, Raquel.
And several women
Welch was
prisoners
also
in the 1980s.
Yeah. So then, let's see, going down here. Okay, it was converted to. After the hotel ceased operation, it was then converted to Deckard Jail, which is now closed. And that was the women's prison, basically. And then there was a developer. Which makes sense
because it's right across the street from the Dallas City Prison.
Exactly. So then the developer wanted to demolish it, but they pushed for, because it was mid-century. It was a mid-century building tied to cultural history of Dallas. They wanted to, they decided to keep it. So the guy that bought the company, the developer that bought and redid the Statler Hotel, is who was last engaged in this. But that was pre-COVID. So something happened, obviously. And then... Yeah,
it said that this development company that bought it actually is doing another one over on 75 and Forest, another affordable housing. So somehow they're tied into that business model. I don't even know how that would work. So I have a formal patient that reached out on social, wanted to help finding a Section 8 rental. And on our MLS, you can search Section 8, but there are not a whole lot. And so the need for affordable housing is real. And I mean, it's a problem that especially with inflation and everything getting more and more expensive, I'm sure it's something that has to be solved. And there has to be developers out there. There have to be developers out there who are willing to work the financial system and take the credits and pencil deals. It needs to be done. But I also know from, a neighborhood and a social standpoint, there is typically a lot of pushback, and I can understand that. So, all right. So I want to get into checking in a little bit on how things are going for you, Tavis, but I know you woke up this morning and wanted to talk a lot about Taylor Swift and her new boyfriend, Travis Kelce. So, as it pertains, so what's interesting is about that, I was watching the NFL this last weekend, and that's all everyone wanted to talk about was Tay-Tay going to the Chiefs game. But so what's interesting about it is they started dating. I saw this article that said Kelce's real estate empire has nothing on Taylor Swift's, and which is, it is a little, Tom Brady dated Giselle were married. Were married, and for the longest time, he was like, oh yeah, she makes a lot more money than he does. I think she was worth like $400 million or something like that.
Wow.
And I think maybe he earned, football wise, 100 and something. I mean, he has a lot of, deals. So this is similar. So it looks like, Kelce, he's had several good contracts, but I think I was reading this article, and I think Taylor Swift is worth like $700 million or something. Wow. And one funny statistic said a close second to Rihanna as far as self-made musician females, a close second, and she was 1.4 billion. I'm like, look, that's not a close second. That's twice. So anyway, so Kelce has a decent house in, I think it's like $1 million house in Kansas City, which looks pretty sweet. I mean, for $1 million in Kansas City, evidently you can get something pretty awesome. But she has $150 million worth of real estate, like 8 pieces of real estate. It's crazy. she's got 4 apartments in New York, and they're all, 10, 20, $30 million penthouses, which
Wow.
I guess is an investment. I mean, I don't operate. I'm going to break some news to people that are just listening. I don't operate in that world. And having 4 apartments in the same city, outside of just being a pure investment, I don't even know what you would do. I mean, I guess you decorate them all differently and it's a different vibe and you can kind of like hang out. I don't even know what you would do with that. But I thought that was like super interesting that he's got this $1 million house. I'm sure he's thinking he's doing pretty great. He starts dating this girl that has $150 million worth of real estate all over the country. So with that, rewind. How long have you and Tabitha been married?
21 years.
Yeah. So rewind 21 years. See, when I got married, I had an air mattress and a bookshelf. Karen had a house, a paid for car, no school loans. I was like, it was very opposite. And I don't know, there's a part of me obviously that you say, oh man, that's great. And you have this whole world of real estate all over the country and all that. And then there's a part of me just kind of as a guy, it's like, it was a little intimidating just having, that would be weird. I would feel obligated, like Mo, like every time we go to her like Nashville estate, I would just feel I have to do something to like kind of earn my spot there. I don't know. I'd have a tough time with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. It's interesting. I mean, cause when you're at that level, I mean, with a net worth of $750 million, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you see that. You see different people at that level with just extravagant homes, and they just sit there. I don't think they do much from the investment side.
Well, the maintenance of something like that has to be nutso too, right? I mean, you have a
I'm sure,
$20 million
and obviously,
house.
I'm sure it's divided up between several different entities, right? And there's definitely tax, benefits, and however they've got it structured is definitely, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine they're not just sitting ducks that sit there collecting dust.
Sure.
But it is interesting. I mean, when you see that, it's just, I don't know, it's mind-boggling. I mean, we've got 3,000 square foot home now, and it used to be like 1,800 square feet, and then we added on, but we don't even go upstairs.
Right.
There's 1,100 square feet that I'm like always dreading going upstairs because I'm wondering what kind of mess is up there,
Yeah. Dion had that house up in Prosper for a while.
Pretty lazy.
Did you ever drive by Dion's house?
Yeah, now that I did, and what's interesting with that, and you look at history, when that happened, you kind of wonder like, wow, right? I mean, he bought this huge tract of land. I don't know how many acres it was.
It was
and, had a private pond and a private football field and, the whole 9 yards, right? And it was amazing. And it was up there kind of before all this development was done. So you wonder, who got to him and who advised him originally to go up there and do it, especially on that strategic corner of Preston and I forget the crossroad, but some Preston Trails maybe or something like that. But nevertheless, I mean, it was an icon, right? When you drive up there, everyone knew it was Dion's house, right? And prior to that, acres. I think. There you go. So prior to that, he had a place over here in what is it? Why am I drawing a blank? Willow Bend, right? Yeah. So he had a place there in Willow Bend, but then he went up there and bought that. Well, now what's interesting is if you look at that development now, they kept that estate, so that house is still there. Obviously, it was extremely gaudy for my taste. It was just
29
money, no object.
Feet. That's what it says. 10 bedroom,
like gold,
10 bath,
gold toilets, and like a big giant round master bed. And I mean, it was god awful as far as the design choices. But now, if you look, the estate's still there. The house is there with just a couple acres, and they fully developed everything around it.
Yeah.
So what he was able to do is buy it, enjoy it, sit on it, and then wait till the prime time to sell it off to another developer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any mixed use commercial on that main corner, but that being an extreme corner,
Last time I was up there
high
was a
traffic
grocery
area.
store.
I think it is. You know, I think they carved off the corner, right, for commercial real estate, and then the rest of it they developed into houses now. So
Yeah.
like that house is still there, but everything around it has been fully developed. So
Yeah, really
it was
crazy.
definitely strategic, you know, when you think
Yeah.
about that. So
Yeah. Our last note, just a little quick hit. They said this on the ticket this week, which I just thought was hilarious. Sad news: Kevin Costner is getting a divorce, which is really funny. His wife wanted $40,000 a month for rent, and one of her arguments was that she complained that her rental doesn't come with a pool house, and her guests are going to have to come inside to shower. So she needed more money every month. She was getting 40 grand, or they allocated 40, or I was like, that is again, I don't operate on that level. So, you know, I'm sure it's more about principle and it's a percentage of what's coming in, you know, but it is a weird sort of, oblivious argument to say, well, here's why I need more money. It's because this doesn't have a pool
Yeah.
house, and you know, how embarrassing. So,
who is it that was married to Britney Spears? Kevin
Kevin
Federline,
Federline.
right?
Yeah.
There was something I heard, you know, on the radio the other day, and it was something like that. We'll have to pull it up for next time.
Yeah.
But it was something like that Kevin was asking some kind of spousal support or something that he was taking her back to court for, some stupid, crazy number of what he wanted to be paid. So.
Insane. So we'll wrap it up here in just a little bit. I do want to make it a regular part of our Friday podcast to just do a real quick hit on a real estate topic. And Tavis and I actually sat in on, well, I sat in on the class. Tavis taught it the other day at Keller Williams. I'm actually officially now with Keller Williams. And so I was at a meeting there, and the topic was sellers concessions. And so I'll kind of open it up, and then we can talk about a few of the finer points there, Tavis. But in any sale, on a residential sale, I'm sure it happens commercial, but we'll talk residential. On the buy side, if you make an offer on the house, you have an option period. The option period is your 5 to 7 days, which is negotiable. And that is your period of time to get an inspection. And for any reason, you can walk away for a pretty minimal amount of money, you know, $500, whatever you've negotiated. But you can have 15 people come in there and inspect it, foundation, roof, whatever. But a lot of times people just hire an all-purpose Trek licensed inspector. They go in there, they give a report. The realtor then looks at that report with the buyer and says, okay, here are some things that came up in the inspection. And the option is you can accept that and say, look, we're good. Let's just buy the house as is. Or you can say, look, we need this item. Let's just call it the air conditioning. There's something wrong with the air conditioning. We need the air conditioner fixed. So you can ask for the seller to pay for it. Just go ahead and give me $1,000 towards closing, and I'm going to use that money to fix the AC after I move in. Or you can say, hey, I want you to fix this before I move in. And so we had this whole conversation on kind of the finer points of that. And so, Tavis, why don't you kind of talk about some of the benefits of, like, from a seller's standpoint, why would you fix some things and why would you just go ahead and make a concession financially?
Yeah, so I think the topic of the panel was how to negotiate repairs, in real estate or while you're under option, right? Was kind of the idea. And I think a lot of people are struggling with this currently because we're coming out of a crazy market that we've had over the last 2-3 years where, prices were, we're driving multiple offers and, we were such so dominating in the seller's market, right? So the seller could pretty much choose what they wanted, take the price that they wanted, and then say, you're buying it as is. I don't care what's on your inspection report. I'll go to the next buyer. And so now you've got some people that are still in that same mentality, and you have buyers that now are saying, hey, the market's shifted a little bit, and we're not going to go for that, right? So I think, it was interesting. Some people on the panel were talking some of the comments that they made, and one of the big ahas I took from it was they said, now's the time to kind of think about talking to your seller when you're doing a seller's net and almost add back in 1% cost of sale regarding inspections.
Yep.
So what that means is, like, if you have a $500,000 sale, budget in about $5,000 that may need to be contributed to the buyer, or either in lieu of repairs, meaning that you're offering up concessions or money on the contract, whether it's going to closing cost or whether it's coming off the sales price, or actually doing potentially $5,000 worth of repairs. And like I said, a couple years ago, that was non-existent. I mean, heck, do you remember, and Ashton, I know, you've been in this a couple years, but I mean, people were getting so creative on how to win a bid that they were willing to pay seller's closing costs as a buyer. So a buyer would come into the deal and say, hey, I'll pay the real estate commissions, or I'll pay this, right? Not only am I going to pay title and give you $50,000 over asking, but I'm going to do this and this and this. And I'll let you stay in the house for 3 months to 6 months. I'll buy you a steak dinner. I'll give you, it was like, it was crazy. The different incentives buyers were doing and agents were coaching to try to get people to win a bid, because people were getting outbid everywhere. And then people would just get frustrated and just, okay, I don't care. I just want the house. I don't care what I have to do. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was the mentality that we were in. So not only is it consumer market that had that mentality, but it's agents too. So a lot of times, one of the hardest things that we deal with in traditional real estate is the communication with other agents, right? And I put it together a lot of times when you watch different, shows or movies, et cetera, or just, studying, what goes on in the legal world between attorneys, even though we're obviously not practicing law, so I'll make that clear. But there's similarity that we have representation on the buy side and representation on the seller side.
Yeah.
And it's very much like when you have a legal case and you have attorneys that represent both sides. And those attorneys, could be at lunch one minute, right, having a cocktail and hanging out and whatever because they're buddies, and then all of a sudden they're representing two different cases.
Yep.
And they have to come together on behalf of their client. And so the same thing happens in our world, that it's a matter of kind of meeting of the minds, understanding what we know, coaching the client, and then trying to figure out how to collaborate it and give the information the best we can over to the other side, and then expect that person to relay it to their client, right?
Sure.
So one of the biggest things that I think was talked about was communication, right? Just being clear and concise in the communication, whether you're representing the buyer or representing the seller from either side of it, and having the facts and really just kind of going through line item by line item, and then kind of looking at the big picture of the equation and saying, okay, these are the things that were found in discovery, right? These are the things found during the inspection. Here's what they are. Here's what may or may not come up again on the next inspection or the next house, right? Whether you're representing either side. And then let's try to dissect it and go down and look at the big ticket items, right? And the funny thing is, they asked me, or they, it was a panel, so they were asking everybody, and I didn't get to comment because we were running out of time. But, and they said one of the craziest stories, please tell us one of the craziest stories you've dealt with right. Negotiating repairs, whether it was on the buy side or the sell side. And, I immediately looked at you because you just recently had that happen
a
few months back. And I remember, I think it was like a Sunday morning or something, and I remember you were freaking out, and you called me, and you're like, I don't know what to do. They had their inspections, and this agent was telling you everything you wanted to hear up until that point, right? Yep. She was telling you how easy things were going to be, how much they loved the house, and yada yada yada, and then basically sends you the entire inspection report.
Yep.
asking for everything across the,
I think
across
it
the
was
sun.
21. So this is a house I flipped. And so I was already emotionally tied to it. I had spent months
Right.
fixing everything up. I knew what was right or wrong. And yeah, I mean, they had 21 points of things that they wanted. And I tried to talk, and one of them literally was, there was a few slats on the fence that were loose, and they were indignant because they had a dog. And so, so I actually decided to take on a lot of that stuff myself. And it brings up this other point, and, we can kind of get deeper into this maybe when we're in our flipping 101 type stuff, but basically it came down to, they assumed since I was a flipper, I had just this endless supply of workers that could come in and just do stuff kind of almost for free. In their mind, it was like, we'll just have them fix it, but it all costs money. And so the thing that I learned was, instead of trying to tinker and do stuff myself, it's way better from a liability standpoint to just go ahead and pay. You have to pay someone, get a receipt to show like this was done properly. But the problem I ran into was, I should have just come up with a dollar amount and agreed to it, because one of the things they wanted was foundation. There was a pier that was, or a beam that was twisted. So I paid a guy to go fix it. Well, then in the process, his guys accidentally cut the wrong beam. And so then and then the house is shifted again. And so now a door doesn't close right. And I'm like chasing all these problems. And then they wanted to paint something, and my dude dropped paint on the carpet that now they've already agreed that the carpet's fine, but now it's got a stain on it. Like, it was just like this one thing after another. And after a while I was like, man, I just want to cut a check and be done with it.
Well, not only that, you had timing, right? I mean, you're now talking, by the time you get an inspection done, you get the report done, and I think she probably strung you out like 7 days. So,
right to the end.
On a 30-day contract, I mean, now by the time you get the information, you've got less than 3 weeks to tackle all of these projects, right?
Yeah.
And get all this done. Like you said, it's strategic. I mean, construction that has a system that you have to follow.
Yeah.
And, putting things first and second and third and fourth.
Yeah, my 2 cents is, and then we'll start to wrap up, is this. And I meant to bring this up earlier, and I wanted this to be a part of this normal podcast, but we live in the Dallas area right now. The average on all the MLS, which our MLS stretches over to Abilene and some parts of Shreveport randomly, and Wichita Falls, but on average, the average days on market right now are 22 days for our MLS. It's not a slow market. Slow market means your days on market are through the roof. It's a small market. There are less houses coming onto the market. There's less houses selling. There's less historically low people applying for loans. It's a small market. It's not necessarily a slow market.
So a stabilized market is 6 months worth of inventory.
And we've got 3.2. That's what I was going to say. On our MLS right now, months of supply, when you look at the whole MLS, I'm looking at it 3.2 months. So it's still actually a really, really healthy market, and almost a seller's market, because it's 3.2. There's not a ton of stuff out there. It's actually moving pretty fast. And so so this is where the education comes in. You as a buyer and seller, and you as an agent that's representing people, need to know the facts, and don't just pay attention to the news where you think, oh yeah, it's a buyer's market now. It's not. And so if you go in trying to bully people around, trying to, hey, we want this and that, and you take that posture from the beginning, statistically, you're in the wrong. You are playing with fire a little bit, because there's a good chance there's going to be another offer there. They could wait, and they say no. You could walk away, and they probably will get another offer and another. I mean, that's a game. But, that being said, is know your market, find an agent who's willing to actually look at the actual facts, not just look at the news and the sentiment of like, hey, the housing market's crashing. So you think, well, I'm a buyer, I can push people around. And then it's just the golden rule is great, because you think, well, if you're bullying people over here, you either just sold a house or you're about to sell a house, and you want to go ahead and go about that in a way that how you would want to be treated. And so that was also one of the sentiments of that, the panel was like, look, you're about to go through this. Don't bully people around, even if you feel like now, that being said, get your best deal, do the best thing for your client. But there's decorum, there is sort of a way to go about it, So
when I think, going back to the repair side of it, the other big aha and takeaway, I think, for everybody listening is, coach your client to show up. So if you're a buyer and you've got inspections, be there the last 30 minutes to an hour at the inspection. Walk through it with the inspector. Again, talking about communication, what the inspector has to put on the report per their rules and guidelines, right? The Texas Real Estate Commission basically creates this, inspection report that they go through and point and click, and then they might put comments in there, but they have to either mark it, deficient or, in good working order or non-existent, basically.
Yeah.
So, in that, and they'll put on there if they inspected or not, whatever. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what you're looking at, and again, us as agents, we deal with this all the time, but a buyer, statistically, I mean, people, the average person buys and lives in a home for 5 years. So if they're only doing this once every 5 years, and things change and inspections increase and everything else, people don't know, right? So you've got to be there to go through the inspection report, lay your eyes on it, know what you're looking at. And it was a good possibility that in your scenario on your house that the buyers were not there, and then they get an inspection done, they get the report, and then they're talking to the agent, and it's basically like, the buyer's looking at the report going, this all looks bad. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing all these deficiencies, and goes back to the agent and says, yeah, we want everything, right? We're paying full price for this house. This investor just put all this money into it. Why can't he fix these other things? Why weren't these things done? And they need somebody to say, look, I've got a market deficient, but this wasn't building code when the house was built, right? Yeah. Or this or this, right?
There's a difference between what's code if you were actually building it new and what's actually acceptable to live in. And there is a gray area there. You don't necessarily have to bring everything to code, but you do want things to be safe and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk for. Yeah, that was an hour. That was supposed to be an hour-long conversation the other day just about that. So we can talk. There's a lot of fine points. So all that being said, is on our Friday episode, we're hoping to be a little lighter, bring some news, bring some whatever's going on in your day, and touch a little bit on the topic of real estate, the market, and that sort of thing. And then we're going to get more of a deep dive and actual how-to type stuff in our Tuesday podcast. So go, Tavis.
I think today is almost 2 episodes, so we could split it up, and just
we'll probably go a little increments. Yeah, we'll probably go a little shorter on our other ones. We'll get it down. So it's been awesome to get to talk to you guys again. Please like and subscribe. I never really thought I would say that, but it's true. Share it with your friends. As we're getting a little bit of traction, we really do want to spread the word on what we're doing. So if you like it, go ahead and like it and subscribe. Copy the link, send it to a friend. We're getting our podcast on all the different platforms. We're working on Apple and Spotify and Google and all that. That should be either up now or coming around the corner. So just a little bit of technical details. Tavis, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and how they can check out your work.
Hey guys, so it's Tavis, like Travis, no R. You can pretty much find me on all social media platforms. I'm heavy on Facebook, also Instagram, Tavis.Westbrook on Instagram and Facebook. So if you just look up Tavis, Tavis, and last name is Westbrook, I think you'll find me. And we're happy to keep going with this, guys, and please give us feedback too. So Ashton and I are learning and trying to figure out what kind of content you guys want to hear and what we can do to empower your businesses and and give you guys knowledge and information that we come across day to day. So we appreciate you guys tuning in.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me. I'm Ashton Hines. I'm the Dallas Real Estate Guy on Instagram, and different platforms there. Reach out, let us know what you want to hear about. And if you have a house that you would like to sell, or if you're looking to buy in the Dallas area, I'm definitely in that market. I know Tavis is looking for houses to flip all the time, and I'm in that business. I got a flip going right now, and I'll be looking soon. So if you have anyone that you know in your life that is needing to sell a house that's not appropriate for the MLS, it's a real crapper. Go ahead and let us know, and we can help you out. So that will be it for today, and we will catch you next week.